Welcome to First. I'm Shirley Min along with Mark Eichman. Nichelle Polston is off this week. We have a report card on how the Smarter Balance testing is going, and we now have an official change in Delaware's landmark Coastal Zone Act.
In addition to reporting on test scores, we partner with Delaware today on a way to keep kids reading during the summer months. Could be a reflection of future reading test scores.
And future success in reading might just be found with the Baby Bookworms program at AI DuPont Children's Hospital. What these kids get in support now will hopefully stay with them for a lifetime.
First, your public media news magazine starts now. Education and the environment are the topics for our first look this week. We'll go over the changes to the Coastal Zone Act in a moment.
But first, let's bring in education reporter Chris Barish. Now, the State Department of Education released the latest Smarter Balanced Assessment test scores as well as the SAT scores. Fair to say that they remained largely flat?
Well, the overall trend line is a little bit lower this year. Scores were up or down like 1 point. But the key fact is that in math and science, less than half of our 3rd through 8th graders are proficient, and barely half are up to speed in English. Now, what's more troubling is in the SATs, less than 3 in 10 are proficient, which means more than 70% of our kids are not ready to take and pass a college course.
And so what does Governor Carney say about that?
Well, the governor and state education officials, they prefer to focus on the fact that more kids are taking the test and more are, being found proficient. But even they acknowledge that the results are mediocre at best. And the stark reality is that too many of our children are not grasping the basic concepts they're being taught, and they're being promoted to, year by year to each grade, and they fall further and further behind.
That's scary. Okay, so now 3 years ago, then Governor Jack Markell designated 6 schools in Wilmington as priority schools. He gave them a total of $6 million and even threatened to close them if they didn't improve. How are they doing now?
Well, they're making minor gains as well, but remember, these are schools where 25% proficiency is considered a major achievement. And consider Bayard Middle School, which has 3% of the students are proficient in math. 3%, think about that. Governor Carney has created this new Office of Improvement and Innovation to focus on the schools that are failing. But it's easy to talk about trying to change these schools. It's a lot harder to achieve it. So I'll be keeping an eye on the weakest links in our system.
Okay, thank you so much, Chris. And you can find his story on the new results at newsworks.org/Delaware. Now, another part of our first look this week has to do with the environment.
Shirley, that has to do with changes to the Coastal Zone Act. Governor John Carney signed a bill into law this week, which allows for some significant changes to the definitions of what can and cannot be done with the industrial areas along the Delaware River.
There we go.
Governor Carney joined legislators and business leaders at the former site of the General Chemical plant in Claymont to sign the bill allowing 14 industrial sites along the Delaware River to be redeveloped.
The most important thing that we talked about during the campaign was creating an environment where businesses could come and create jobs. And that took a lot of different colors. One was to better utilize existing industrial sites.
The bill was approved by wide margins in both the Senate and House near the end of this year's legislative session. And while it does allow industrial redevelopment, it also requires cleanup of polluted sites as they're redeveloped. Supporters are optimistic about the prospects for creating jobs at these sites.
It's what jobs is going to be created from this, who's going to take advantage of this opportunity that we're providing, and the job creation that could come from that opportunity.
Some of those jobs will be with D2 Management, which is already working on reconstructing some of the General Chemical site in Claymont, where Carney signed the legislation earlier this week. D2 hopes to bring hundreds of heavy industry jobs to the Claymont area.
Knowing industrial sites, it just has good bones. You have water access, you have rail access, you have highway access. So, and you're on Main Street. We had a business plan, and really without this bill, we would have had to make a lot of sacrifices in the plan. There wouldn't have been as many jobs, there wouldn't have been much in economic development.
Environmental groups who have expressed concern over the changes are no doubt watching this very closely. We invite you to check out regional environmental reporting on the watershed page of newsworks.org/Delaware. You can click the drop-down menu on the left side of the page.
First Person now, and we have Stephanie Hansen here with us again, although today you are here as state senator. Welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you.
Lots to discuss today, but want to start with the signing of the Coastal Zone Act bill.
Yes.
You voted for it. Did you have any doubts before casting that vote?
Yes, I had a lot of doubts. You know, this was a very, very difficult piece of legislation for me to vote on. And I think more than anything, I had issues with the way it came about. Because, you know, my understanding going through the process was that it was going to be a much broader, more inclusive process with all of the environmental groups, with all the interested parties. But the reality was that it was a bill that had been kind of in the works for a number of years. And so there wasn't an appetite on the part of the sponsors to go back and kind of open up that whole process again. And that was I think, the most difficult part for me. It was more process related. Substantively, though, I think it is definitely the right way to go. And we've talked about this, you know, for a long time. This is one of the things that was discussed even in my election, is that, you know, we have properties in the coastal zone that are contaminated, and unless they are redeveloped and new money and energy is put into those projects, then they're not going to get cleaned up to a higher standard. So I believe that's the case here, and it would be bringing in extra jobs as well, good jobs, not extra, good jobs, good paying jobs in areas where right now we have no jobs and we have some contaminated sites.
Governor Carney had said that HB 190 is part of a way to help grow the economy in Delaware.
Correct.
Do you see a big picture plan now starting to take form under the Carney administration in a way to grow the economy here in Delaware?
I do, and in particular, let's back up with the coastal zone again and how that piece is important. That piece is critically important of redeveloping in particularly the general chemical, Everett, Claymont area, because there's connection there to railroad, which is then a connection over to the boxwood plant, the former boxwood plant, that could be used as a staging area that then that rail connects to many other places outside of Delaware. So we have a large transportation now infrastructure corridor that can connect from outside of Delaware through rail to Boxwood to the coastal zone to the Seven Seas at this point, because it's out into, you know, we've connected to the river. So that, I think, is going to be critically important for us going forward. And I think that was probably a centerpiece of Governor Carney's plan.
In any other ways do you see where he is starting to plant seeds to help the economy grow in other areas of the state?
Yes, I know that there is a lot of emphasis, as there should be, on biopharmaceuticals and growing that industry around the University of Delaware. There's a large facility there, a number of facilities there that have invested a lot of money. These are private facilities, but they're also now, there's becoming a critical mass of them where it's beginning to draw more companies there. They're seeing that they've got the intellectual and workforce firepower in that area. And that's going to be very helpful. Plus the expansion of the Amtrak station right there in Newark is going to be well too. Again, we go back to infrastructure. You know, so much of this comes to not just care for our infrastructure, but building and enhancing the infrastructure that we have.
We're still trying to gauge the long-lasting impact of the postponed budget vote in July. Did you support a rise in the personal income tax that Governor Carney had proposed?
Yes, I would have supported that. And the reason is that, in particular, the creation of a new tax bracket above what we currently have. Because right now, if you make $60,000 or above, you pay the same rate of personal income tax, which doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. Because if you make $60,000 or $260,000, the $260,000 person or $160,000 person that's bringing in that much money into their household is still paying the same tax rate as someone that's making $60,000. And I think that that's something, from what I heard from my constituency, was that something that they would support, this extra tax bracket there. I think what gave me a lot of heartburn was, though, getting rid of all of the tax deductions, because that's really problematic, because people depend on nonprofits and charitable organizations depend a lot on those tax deductions, and people like giving those tax deductions, knowing that they're going to get some kind of a credit on their income tax.
Governor Carney, though, doesn't seem afraid to make those unpopular decisions, though, in order to get the budget more in shape long term, you know? Do you see
Correct.
that?
Yes, that's good, because that shows that he has the personal fortitude to make the tough calls and the tough choices, which we are all going to have to do in the General Assembly.
Well, consequently, we're still going to face another deficit next spring. So is there a long-term solution?
Well, we're going to come back and continue the fight, this personal income tax issue versus prevailing wage. I mean, that's where the big rub came in the General Assembly that was not able to be worked out in the meantime. I know that there is still a lot of research and discussion on both of those issues. We're also going to be looking at now consolidating school districts again. I mean, really carefully, because with 19 school districts, that seems to be an area that's rife for a lot more savings than we're currently having right now.
And quickly, finally, are you thinking about what's needed to mount the campaign in 2018 for a re-election for you?
Yes. Yes, it seems like I just did this. You know, we all just did this. And I want to apologize to all of the people that received so many, you know, letters and literature pieces and phone calls in my campaign, and do a proactive apology and say, you're going to get them again.
Yeah.
Probably not like that, because there's no way that kind of effort is going to be in this campaign at this point, because I'm going to be one of a whole bunch of people running instead of just the only race in town. But a proactive apology to everyone. Please get ready. We're having to gear up.
Okay, Senator Stephanie Hansen of Middletown, great to see you again. Thanks so much
you.
for being here. You can check out this interview in its entirety. Click on the first person link at newsworks.org/Delaware.
There is one other issue, this one a national issue that does have a Delaware connection. It concerns President Trump's order late last week banning transgender people from serving in the military. Sarah McBride is from Delaware, and she serves as press secretary for the National Human Rights Campaign. We asked her for her reaction.
When this administration started, they started out by rescinding guidance protecting and promoting the dignity of transgender students. We've seen attacks on the rights of LGBTQ workers, and obviously most recently we saw this attack on transgender troops. So this administration is definitely attempting to roll back the clock, and they'll win some and they'll lose some, but what's clear is that the arc of the moral universe bends towards justice.
McBride called the move political and predicts it could backfire in the 2018 congressional midterm elections. Meanwhile, she says LGBT groups are waiting for more specific details on the order. Coming up on First, keeping kids interested in reading isn't a simple task. In our Delaware Today partner segment, we check out one program targeting kids to try it out. And his work goes back to the original Mad Men advertising days. Experience the work of 103-year-old Matt Connor. We talk with him later on First.
This summer, AI DuPont Hospital for Children rolled out a new reading program for its most vulnerable patients. Through baby bookworms, the fragile babies in the neonatal intensive care unit are not only being nourished physically, their brains are being fed too.
Nicole Hall's twins, Logan and Liam, were born 14 weeks premature.
Logan's doing a little bit better than Liam. He was a little bit bigger when they were born, so he's a little bit further ahead. Liam's just kind of hanging out and trying to get off the little ventilator that he's on.
Because they were born so early, Hall's boys are in the neonatal intensive care unit here at AI DuPont Hospital for Children. Their every need is met in the NICU, including their mental needs now. NICU nurse Sarah Baki came up with the idea of Baby Bookworms, a program the hospital started in June.
Baby Bookworms is really about language nutrition. So language nutrition is the idea that, we give breast milk to nourish the body, but words nourish the brain.
Research shows exposing children to lots of quality words before the age of 3 gives them a huge academic advantage later on in life.
During 0 and 18 months, that's the period of the most rapid brain growth that occurs in life. And so when we educate parents and tell them this simple act of reading can have such a great impact on their baby's later academic success, I think that empowers them to really help, play a role in that and feel like they're making an impact and partnering with us and the volunteers.
And when mom and dad can't be there, volunteers make the reading rounds 3 times a day, 7 days a week. The March of Dimes Delaware chapter donated the books and the mobile cart that parents and volunteers can pull from.
Hey diddle diddle, the cat and the fiddle, the cow jumped over the moon.
18-year-old Jessica Coulter volunteers at the hospital and loves how the simple act of reading a nursery rhyme can make such a difference.
Babies, even though they are very young, most people think that they don't understand what I'm saying. But when you talk, and especially when you talk in melody and you say repetition, all of that has a really big impact. They really take that in, especially when they're in the NICU. They're hearing monitors and the same sounds, the same voices. So when you get a chance to bring them out of that zone, they really, really take that in.
I think it's really cool just because we can't be here all the time. So to know that they're reading to them and kind of nourishing them in that way is really cool.
I am aware of some reading programs in other hospitals, but I think that this is really a unique program, just the scale of the program and the unique elements of having the volunteers come on a regular basis and the education that we're doing with the parents. I'm not aware of anything like it.
Baki says the next chapter of Baby Bookworms is to expand the program to other parts of the hospital.
Volunteers leave notes for the parents, telling them what books were read to their babies while they were gone, and gave little updates like Logan grabbed my finger. Baby Bookworms also ties in nicely to Nemours Reading Bright Start program that already existed and is geared toward early childhood literacy.
Did you just tune in? Can't stick around to watch the rest of the show? Go to WHYY.org/first to watch Delaware's news magazine when you want. Past shows are there too.
Catherine Lindroth has had a singular mission the last 5 summers, reducing the huge achievement gap in Delaware between low-income children and those of means. In our August report with content partner Delaware Today magazine, we take a look at how her program has evolved in Wilmington, where the disparities are the widest.
Our education system needs help in Delaware, and that's why you're seeing kids who are dropping out, kids who are seniors in high school and can't write a paragraph, kids who are in the 5th grade who don't know the alphabet, things that should not be happening down the street from here.
Catherine Lindroth's ground zero was Wilmington, where the Yale-educated former Teach for America administrator has steadily grown her summer learning collaborative. This year, the program has 2,300 K to 10th grade student campers at 14 community centers and schools, 12 of them in Wilmington.
It could be coping skills and having them identify with their sense of self. It could be reading intervention to help them with their reading skills to make sure they're on target for school, and just leadership skills as well.
To that end, the so-called Summer Collab has married itself to established day camps at institutions such as the YMCA and Boys and Girls Clubs. So between swimming and dancing and crafts, students are tutored in reading, math, science, even engineering. The emphasis is on learning to think critically, to be creative and persistent, all while having fun.
We made telescopes. We had a magnifying glass, then we took the circle out. Then we had a cardboard, then moved it up into a circle. Then we put the magnifying glass in it with hot glue. And then we used aluminum foil to wrap it around so it could be like colorful.
Take this class at Salesianum School, where student campers are plugging away at this experiment using pulleys and weights to save a fisherman. They didn't succeed while WHYY was there, but not for lack of effort or imagination. Lindroth says research shows that affluent students improve over the summer,
I want you to look at the picture.
but low-income children go backward.
2/3 of the academic achievement gap is happening in the summer.
The program uses certified teachers and high-achieving high school and college students, and then immerses the children in academics. Lindroth says nearly 9 in 10 reversed summer reading loss last year, with big gains in sight word recognition, vocabulary, and phonics.
First word is cat. Get your hand ready. Cat, ready? Cat. Cat.
I have trouble in reading, and in the beginning of the day, I go down with Miss Debbie for the computers, and it helps me read, and it tells me all the short vowels.
At Eastside Charter School, which borders the city's Riverside and Eastlake public housing projects, students in one class work with balloons, string, and markers for a project about flight.
What's one way that you could thrust a balloon from one place to another? Yeah.
Throw it.
You could throw it, that's right.
But,
What's
no,
another
air.
way? Air, right?
Progress
So
is
how
also
might
being
we
made
use
in
this
self-discipline and emotional development, crucial components of classroom success.
We have to be good, like do leadership and all that to get trophies, prizes.
Arek Dye says the summer immersion is especially critical for students from broken families who live in poverty or been frequently exposed to crime.
Knowing that these are things that are in their communities, not making excuses for it, but like how do you persevere over that?
The program, which Lindroth hopes will become a national model, was one of 4 honored last month by the National Summer Learning Association. But for young Quadir, the program has also given him a tool, his makeshift telescope, which he can use at home for inspiration and awe on hot summer nights.
I just look into the sky and see if there's any shooting stars.
With so many low-income children so far behind, focusing on summer learning is clearly a step in the right direction. Joining us today is Larry Nagengast, correspondent for Delaware Today and author of a piece for the magazine about the Summer Collaborative. Welcome to First, Larry.
Glad to be here, Chris.
Well, what struck you about the program and what they're trying to accomplish?
Well, what struck me most about it is that they're working with the kids who need the most help. Low income, primarily minority students in Wilmington, who, if they're not exposed to educational activities during the summer, will fall farther and farther behind academically. This program, by working in the community centers where the kids are already going to summer camps, it's just a great way of bringing together the summer camp experience, adding a learning component to it, and giving the kids the extra help that they need so that they can continue to move forward during the regular school year.
Oh, it was interesting to me to see the older kids being exposed to engineering concepts and some of the younger ones taking a class about flight. But what was really impressive to me was the reading classes, and like in the short time we were there one day, I actually saw some kids, make progressions, within 20 minutes.
Well, it's easy. It's not easy. Learning is never easy, but they're doing a fine job here because they've set up a program and created a curriculum where they don't feel like they're learning. It doesn't feel like it's schoolwork, and the reading is integrated into the other activities. And as a result, the kids are doing much better. I saw the results from the 2016 school year where they were learning 3-4 months worth during the summer, picking up that much in their reading skills, where if they were not involved in a program like this, they would be falling a month or 2 farther behind.
All right, well, thanks, Larry. You can check out Larry's reporting at DelawareToday.com.
Macaulay Mac Connor was born in 1913. He's one of the original madmen, like the advertising executives portrayed on TV. Connor is an illustrator who worked on Madison Avenue creating illustrations for advertising campaigns on a variety of products. He also spent some time illustrating literature, from detective novels to romantic fiction. The Delaware Art Museum has an exhibit of Mac's extensive career, and it's our treat to present his work and listen to Mac Connor in person for our first experience.
Mac Connor was an original madman in the sense that he worked in advertising and also in illustrations for magazine fiction. Our exhibition is really a retrospective of his work of the 1950s.
I always drew for a commercial point of view. Illustration, we'll call it. I don't like the word commercial art. I was an illustrator. My point of view, which was the way I lived. I never went in for crazy hats and stuff. I was influenced first by Norman Rockwell, inspired by his sense of humor, and plus his painting, of course. He was a great painter.
Mac's colors are probably the thing that attracts people the most. It's very dramatic. It was an important part of his design sense. The majority of the works we have here are from the 1950s. We do have some from the 60s and one as late as 1973. And by 73, he was moving more toward the illustration of paperback magazines, particularly romance novels. The artist made these works in such a way that they don't seem dated when we look at them now. We recognize they are from another period, but the color and the composition and all of the design elements comprise works of art that speak to us today. It's important for the Delaware Art Museum because we are distinguished as really a home of historic American illustration. Wilmington was the founding home of that in the work of Howard Pyle. I think that there are compelling reasons for people to continue to value this work because it's beautiful, but also because it's part of a historic tradition. Certainly, it's the first experience that I've had with an artist of this age who's looking back at work that he did such a long time ago. He was asked the question, what was the most important thing? And he said, first, hard work. And then he said, it's the love and the heart. It's not just the hand of the artist, but the mind of the artist that goes into it.
It's good to know it's still around. It's good for the ego, of course. It's good for the old ego, you know. You look around and see what you've accomplished over the years. I can't even draw a line now. I can't even draw a line. And I look at this stuff and I say, how the hell did that guy do it?
Mac will turn 104 years old later this year. You can see the full exhibit at the Delaware Art Museum now through September 17th. The exhibit, called The Original Madman, Illustrations by Mac Connor, was developed by the Museum of the City of New York and co-sponsored by the Modern Graphic History Library, Washington University in St. Louis, the Rockwell Center for American Visual Studies, and the Norman Rockwell Museum. You can get more information at delart.org.
And next week on First, we focus on migrant children in Sussex County who come to Delaware with their parents for seasonal work in the summer. There's a state education program aimed at helping them, and at the same time, it also helps their parents. Chris Barish will report.
And that is First for this week. We thank you for watching. For Nichelle Poston, who we hope will be back next week, Chris Barish and Shirley Min, I'm Mark Eichman. Have a great week.